Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Adrian Paul and Ethan Dettenmaier, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Good morning. Wow, what a morning. I've been running and Ethan's been working while I've been trying to run around. Haven't you, Ethan?
I have been, yes.
Yeah, he's been coordinating everything in the studio. Hello, everybody. How are you this morning? This is Adrian Paul and Ethan Dettenmaier at Peace Fund Radio. Did you see the soccer? Ethan, did you see it?
I haven't missed much.
No, I haven't either.
I know. I'm assuming you're talking about yesterday's game.
Oh, you know what?
Between the Americans.
Yeah,
and
you know
Belgium.
the U.S. Personally, I don't know what happened to them. I mean, they were a totally different team in the extra time than they were in the first 90 minutes. Mm-hmm. And you know, they didn't play the game they were supposed to play. I think it was a tactical error, perhaps. I don't know, or they just suddenly went, "Oh, we can beat this team and no problem." I don't know what it was, but they looked totally different, didn't they?
It looked totally psychological for about 75, 80 minutes.
Yeah.
It looked like they were playing very scared, very defensively. I mean, the guy, Howard, broke the record for most saves in a World Cup.
I know. Did you see that? 36,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Something ridiculous?
Yeah.
I was tweeting all the time going, "Okay, now he's just hit the record."
Yeah,
You know?
so... And at one point, Sharp said it was Ian Sharp said it was 13 saves on target to 3, 13 shots on target to 3 for the U.S. So I felt like they were playing on their heels, and then at some point they just decided that they could win and could hang, and decided you cannot play.
But what about the young
You
kid?
can't play for overtime. You cannot play for a tie.
What about the young kid Tim Green?
I love him.
What a great little player he is.
Yeah.
He's like 19 years old, and Beaumont, he comes, scores a goal in the first 3 minutes or something.
Apparently that's one of Klinsmann's finds that nobody was really sure why he picked him.
Bayern Munich he came from. No, absolutely. I mean, Klinsmann's a good. I think they did so well. They've got a lot to build on for perhaps the next World Cup, but I think they've got a really interesting team there.
Yeah,
because there's so much coming through. So
you can't play for a tie.
No, you
I
can't.
felt like they were playing.
That's what I kind of felt for.
Yeah, they were trying to get it to penalty kicks. I felt like they.
Do you think so?
It
would have been the first time the US had ever been on penalty kicks ever.
I don't think they felt like they could beat the Belgians, which was actually
really
disgraceful.
Actually, I tell you something. The Belgium had two very, very good up front players, but they couldn't put the ball in the net.
No,
they had this Origi, and then they had the guy that came on. I can't remember his name. Who's their star centre forward? If they put both of them on against, is it Argentina they're playing next?
Yeah, they got Argentina next.
They may be able to do something because their back four is actually pretty solid up until you get to the final minutes. But anyway, listen. This morning we've got a great guest on the show. I don't want to labour it in the soccer because we talk about this every week. We have a guest who's going to be calling in a second. Bryant McGill is a best-selling author, speaker, and activist in the fields of self-development, personal freedom, and human rights. His writings are small aphorisms that have been published in hundreds of books and quoted in thousands of works by other authors, educators, and social leaders. His writings have actually been translated into 15 languages. He was the subject of front-page cover story in the Wall Street Journal. He was listed as one of the greatest leaders, writers, and thinkers of all time. But you'll find that he's a very, very down-to-earth man. I've spoken to him a few times. We're actually talking about doing some stuff together, so it's going to be very interesting. In an official congressional commendation, the nation's leaders applauded McGill's highly commendable life's work as an ambassador of goodwill and founder of the Nobel Peace Prize-nominated Goodwill Treaty for World Peace. Obviously, there is a connection with the Peace Fund, peace. But anyway, Bryant's delivered speeches with diverse groups from Los Angeles Mayor's Office and Chief of the LAPD to the United Nations, Dr. Gandhi, grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, and the UN Secretary General for Disarmament Affairs. He has some amazing books. You should also check him out, www.bryantmcgill.com. You can actually find out about him there. I'm sure he's going to be talking a lot about stuff this morning. He was also selected by the Global Business Initiative as an up-and-coming speaker and contemporary thought leader. And I want to be asking him a little bit about, how he became that and how he chose this path, because as we've talked before, a path starts and you just don't know where it's going to go, and suddenly it's on your doorstep and you realize that's the path you've chosen for your life's work. But anyway, McGill is actually on a quest to prove that life is still beautiful and that all people have the power to have a better life and world now. So when he calls in, we'll have a great discussion with him. We're going to be talking probably about the journey to inner peace, and it's kind of it's a very good story. The
journey to inner peace.
Mm-hmm. Wish I had that. Actually, I've tried that so many times, and what happens is when you try to actually become, what is inner peace? What is inner peace to you?
Oh man,
it's a tough question, isn't it? What does inner peace mean to you? Have any of you guys out there thought about that? What does inner peace mean? Does it mean you're financially stable? Does it mean you're happy in your family? Does it mean that you are content with your life? Or what does it mean? What does inner peace? What would it take for you to achieve inner peace?
That's why we have Brian McKill.
Exactly. We actually have you actually can see touching on his Goodwill Treaty for World Peace is at www.goodwilltreaty.org, and I'm sure he's going to be talking a little bit more about that. There is as the children segment we're going to be talking about this morning will be the first victims during war, because war affects a lot of children around the world, and the horror stories that you hear on the news that sometimes disappear don't mean that they're not still not happening. And there's stories of courage, but nothing rings as poignantly as the smallest victims, the orphans left to fend for themselves in war zones. And some of the lucky ones are found and placed in orphanages, but some are swept up into the conflict themselves, becoming child soldiers in wars they have no way to understand and should have never been involved in. Imagine your child in war. Can you imagine your 7-year-old, your 8-year-old, your 9-year-old, your 10-year-old? I couldn't. And I look at even the society today. I mean, what do you do with your kid these days, Ethan? I mean, we've talked about this before, how you actually have, are you scared about your child going to school or going to some areas that are less than favourable?
Yeah, of course. There's always caution.
I mean, the interesting thing is a lot of the time we are never aware of the areas around us that are very, very dangerous. Even in Los Angeles, as we speak, outside of Palm Springs, there's an area here that is basically meth city that is constantly on a war zone every single day. And to imagine that's probably 30 miles, 50 miles away from us is kind of scary.
Yeah, that is scary.
I mean, so think about it, everybody.
Is that what they call it, Meth City?
Yeah, basically it's one of the.
Sounds like a Judge Dredd comic.
Yeah, it could be interesting. I'm not going to mention the city because that's not my job here. But there are many children that are touched by that in our communities, as well as those that have been touched in many ways during armed conflicts. And usually schools and hospitals are actually target of armed forces because civilians in these places become victims through these attacks, although it's no fault of their own. And even at the end of a conflict, mines, cluster bombs, and other explosive remnants of war are instruments of death that continue to strike civilians. So, discussing this with Bryant this morning, I'm going to be asking him about some of these topics. The last 10 years, just here's a little statistic for you. During the last 10 years, around 10 million children are estimated to have been killed as a result of war. 10 million. That's more than the Holocaust in World War II. Yeah. Many more children die or become gravely ill from indirect physical illness of war. Hospitals, health centres are destroyed, doctors and nurses are killed, children are vulnerable to disease like diarrhea, malaria and cholera, and treatment is simple and cheap, but millions of kids have died through lack of it, and a total of perhaps 4 to 5 million have been disabled as a result of the experience of war, and more than 12 million have been made homeless. Those numbers are staggering, and I think there are. I want to talk a little bit right now about what we've got coming up, because I've been, I was a little late this morning getting onto the studio because we have our Peace Fund Games event and our poker event and our golf events that we are progressing currently. The Peace Fund Games event is turning into a very large affair. We already have quite a few celebrities that have attached themselves to it. We have sponsors, we have volunteers, we have Great people at the Peace Fund that have been now coordinating it, as well as a gentleman called Nate Brandon, who has been tireless in actually bringing a lot of this together, structuring the games. It's going to be a 2-day event in November. When you will see it, the website will be up probably by July 4th, which is in 2 days' time. It will be www.thepeacefundgames.org or .us. You will be able to find it anywhere you look, because we will be doing a lot of stuff. We also have media producers and social media experts, as well as I said, corporate sponsors, and we've only just started. And what that basically is going to do, it's going to allow celebrities and charities to make money in a fun 2-day event that will focus on the children that we are supporting, and children the Peace Fund will be supporting over the next coming year, which will include very probably things such as wells in Africa, or distraught children in Haiti, and kids that are possibly under the influence of not so very nice factors in the world, should we just put it. Now, child soldiers, Human Rights Watch estimates between 200,000 and 300,000 of children are serving as soldiers for both rebel groups and government forces in armed conflicts around the world. They're taken in by whatever warring groups find them as young as 10 years old. Some are initially put to work as servants and camp guards. Eventually they're armed and sent into battle, having never known the true joy of childhood due to the war raging around them. It's estimated that 40% of all child soldiers are actually girls. 40% are girls. They often use as wives, sex slaves of the male combatants. I can't even imagine that. Just breaks my heart when I hear about that. So why do these groups often children over adults? Well, as we've discussed before, children are naive, innocent, unconscious of danger, and are much cheaper. They also tend to obey and do not challenge authority. They can also be bullied into doing things. Children living in difficult situations often see this recruitment as a way to solve their problems. I mean, and some of these groups kill their parents and they have nothing, so therefore they join the groups, who then, press gang them into doing unspeakable acts of violence, as well as, in some cases, killing their own parents and siblings, which I just can't even imagine my child doing that. I mean, I know, there are some situations where there is a very big friction, but to actually get to that point is kind of scary to me. So what do you think, Ethan? What do you think about orphans of war? I mean, you ever thought about this? I know a lot of people haven't, but,
Yeah, I've thought about this. I think about this issue quite a bit, actually.
Do you?
Yeah.
And in what context?
Well, I don't know if it's thought of in any particular context, but I think of different angles about this as far as what the trigger points with a situation like this may be, how to solve it, the economic aid that may be required to get these kids out of the trenches and to end some of these conflicts. And I also think whether or not it's even worth it sometimes. I mean, I'm sure it's worth it for the kids, don't get me wrong, but I don't really know how much of an effort we or our State Department is really putting towards ending some of this.
Unfortunately, exploited children in this nature are, as we talked about before, they're in the middle of being used, in a sense, in a political game, because a lot of the time, there was I'm going to forget the name now, but John Bealey will probably have it. It was the warlord in Africa, I want to say in one of the states of Africa, who was using them, and he'd been doing it for the past 20 years, 30 years. And eventually, because of public opinion, because of a group that basically said enough is enough, let's stop this, and gathered 1 million signatures, that eventually the US and the UN started taking note that this could not go on, and started sending in UN peacekeepers and US advisors to the military in that country to actually track him down and put an end to this violence.
Joseph Kony.
Thank you very much, Joseph Kony. You see, now that was the voice of God, wasn't it? Was it just like
far from it, my friend?
Was it? Oh,
far from it.
It's John Bealey.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, John. I take it you've been listening to me, my ramblings this morning.
I have, but they're not ramblings. It's a lot of good information, and I'm looking forward to having Bryant on the show here soon to talk about all of the experiences that he has had and facing a lot of these issues that are that are out there. It's rough.
Yes, is actually we're also going to be having as a surprise guest Jose Green, formerly of the legendary group The Supremes, and he'll be discussing the Supreme Partners Live benefit concert that they're doing together. So we're going to be having a couple of people on. We're waiting momentarily, anxiously waiting for the call to come in.
I think he's actually on the line.
Is he really? Shall we see if we can find him? Brian, are you there?
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
Ah! Have you been listening this entire time without saying anything?
I've been listening to your fabulous dialogue there.
Good morning, how are you?
Oh, man, I'm fantastic. How about you guys?
Fabulous. Welcome to Peace Fund Radio.
Fantastic. Welcome to the show, Brian. So happy to have you.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
So, Brian, you, as you probably heard, I gave you, I talked about many things that you've done and, how you actually got involved into becoming what you're doing now. What put you on the path of this journey to inner peace?
Well, really, just being a weirdo, I think.
Yeah, I know that
Which
feeling.
I think you can relate to that a little bit, right? Everybody who's made this journey, they're kind of weirdos, I think.
Yes, but I'm sure
there's hope for me yet.
I'm sure.
Well, there's hope for you.
Ethan, are you a weirdo?
I mean,
It's not for me to decide.
Anybody who unplugs from the system enough to take a look around, it's just enough to make you want to puke.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what it's all about. Is when you wake up, you become disgusted.
So what? How did you? I mean, you've authored so many books. You've been translated into 15 languages, as I mentioned. What do you speak about when you talk about in your writings and in your social engagements?
Really, what I talk about the most is what I call the male war consciousness, because I plant this. It's a bit unpopular, but I plant these problems squarely on the shoulders of men primarily, and I think this is I even termed it in my book Voice of Reason, the male war consciousness, which I said is it's a living mem. It's a parasitic blight on the soul of human consciousness. And I wrote in there that the war consciousness is alien and suffocating to the untainted spirit nature of women and children, and its unique cruelty is the vile domain of male dominance and represents the lowest part of the male energy. And so, really, when I look around, who's running the world? A lot of people want to resist that notion. Well, no, there are bad women out there too, etc. But if you just look at look at it as a naturalist would, the prima facie evidence is just de facto. It's irrefutable. Practically every legislative body, assembly, Congress, and boardroom on Earth lacks natural balance between the genders that's observable in the population. And I believe that the ultimate male tradition is keeping women from sitting at the table of conversation regarding the balance of power between genders. So I think this is a male problem. I don't know what you guys think about it, but what are your thoughts?
Well, my question would be if it is a male problem, and I could probably agree because of the way that the society or our civilization has grown since time immemorial, that men went out and hunted and women stayed home and gathered and looked after the offspring, etc., etc. However, in this day and age, how do you change that male-dominated problem that you're referring to here?
Well, I would just love to. I really believe that nothing will solve more problems, because I've thought about all these issues that you're talking about infinitely, and just like you guys, I've agonized and excruciated over what I see going on in the world. Which is the world is outside of America, in some countries, which is a fantasy bubble. It is a gruesome house of horrors and a slaughterhouse in many regards, and we're shielded from all of that. And so I used to look at different initiatives, and I used to look at different charities and different ideas of going out and addressing, little pieces of the problem. But I just can't think of anything that would solve more problems than the woman exerting her balanced leadership and guidance. That I just really feel like the that nothing's going to solve more problems. If you just imagine if you had, for example, what I call natural balance, which is observable in the population, applied to the legislative bodies of America. Let's say we had a constitutional amendment, which is something I would love to work toward, or dream about at least. If you imagine if our legislative bodies were balanced 50% men and women, I think women just look at the notion of sending their children off to the slaughter of war differently than men do. And I just really think that having the dialogue of the woman in the conversation is so important. And whenever I look at Congress, whenever I look around the world, whenever I deal with business, hey, we're business guys. We work in the world. Where are the women? I mean, I'm shocked.
I think there are a lot of women in very high power positions these days, much more so than there were. I mean, you take any of the fashion industry, and it's going to take several decades or years to actually infiltrate, if you like, into the male-dominated regions of society. I think that it's a natural evolution that has to happen, but it has to happen slowly. Men do not give up, like you said. Men do not want to give up that power because that's the one thing that they have. So I think it takes time. You do have the fashion industry, for instance, the magazines, the women. All those are run by women. So there are certain parts of society that is dominated by women, and rightly so, because they do deal with things slightly differently than men do. Mm-hmm. Ethan, how in your house do things go? I mean, it's interesting. I want to talk to Ethan Dettenmaier here, who's been listening to our conversation. But how does how does it work? Does Lotta make the choices, or do you make the choices? How does it work for, especially over what your child's got to do?
It's pretty democratic. I mean, we both make certain choices, but it's I would say that the women tend to call the shots in my house about most things, I would say. Let
me ask you another question. But when you make decisions on something, does Lotta go, you know what? I think maybe it's a better way to do it is this. This is the and it's a totally different spin on that situation.
Sometimes, sometimes she presents a different angle. Sometimes it's, harmonious from the outset. It just depends.
I know I have it. I mean, in my life, in my household, it's I'll say something, but sometimes my wife will say something or make me sit back and listen a little bit and go, yeah, maybe I should approach it in that manner, and it does reduce the amount of conflict that my original decision would probably have made. So Brian, you have the books that you have out right now, and what is your goal now? As I said before, you've been translated in 15 languages, and you were actually subject of front page cover story in the Wall Street Journal. What's your focus now? What is your goal now?
Well, it's the goal of a lifetime. Much like you, this is a long range game. There's nothing that's going to be solved immediately. So, I mean, really, I just strive really to be able to even add a small little blip of a voice to a huge, multi-century narrative of evolution into a more egalitarian society where there's more justice. I just want to be cognizant and conscious and awake and aware. I just want to think about things. I want to be. I think being alive is thinking and feeling pain, not just shopping and being happy and just ignoring everything in the world. So, someone tweeted me. Actually, it was Roseanne Barr's partner, and he's a very sensitive person, Johnny, and he said, how can anyone be happy being aware of the suffering that's going on in the world? And because I had written somewhere, I don't remember where, that in some parts of the world that human beings have literally been reduced to nothing more than mere vessels of pain. That's it. Just the embodiment of pain, which is a concept that's difficult for, people who live in luxury compared to most places in the world to even comprehend. And, I said that I thought about it, and I said that, a part of my happiness is being aware of pain. In other words, I couldn't be a happy human being if I wasn't aware of pain. That doesn't mean that I'm happy about pain, but how can I be a happy person if I didn't have empathy for suffering? That doesn't seem like happiness to me. That seems psychotic.
Well, let me ask you a question, Brian. What happens? People are unhappy in their lives a lot of the time. I mean, I'd say 50% of the days are spent with people dealing with problems, whether it is financial, whether it is emotional, those types of problems. How do you change that cycle and realize that you are actually living in pain? Because that actually causes another chain reaction into your reactions to other people around you, including the children that you're associated with.
Okay, well, for me, I can't speak for everyone. I can only speak for me. And what I'm going to say now has made me very unpopular. And I always catch flack for this from everyone. But turn off your damn TV. I just hate television. And for me, the wake-up was getting away from TV. I turned off my television. I haven't watched TV in 25 years. But I was a zombie. I was a sleepwalker. I didn't know anything that didn't come out of Tom Brokaw's mouth. I didn't have an original thought in my head. And I had been raised on a fast food culture to become a mindless robotic consumer. And that's what I did. I was a good boy. I did what I was told. I kept my mouth shut. I went to my job, and I ate Doritos, and I ate at Taco Bell, or whatever other, grotesque witches cauldron concoction these corporations have put in a box for people for maximum profit, subsidizing their profits on the health of other people, long range. And, I just didn't think. But when I turned off the TV, it created a space in my head where I started thinking for myself. I started doing some thinking, and I started looking around and doing some reading. It's like a whole other world out there if you turn off the TV. So for me, at least, I just can't think of anything that'll change a person more than unplugging from the mass consciousness cerebral media drip that everyone is on.
So let me ask you another question. Obviously television, you're talking probably about news channels and informational things that are fed through the television.
Yeah, any commercial television.
Okay, because we as entertainers, as actors, as directors, as producers, etc., we are the storytellers of old, whereby what we do is we entertain people and take them away from what they normally deal with in everyday life.
Yes.
So I agree with you in certain aspects, because I think it's the same thing as the internet. The internet turned up, it gave all this information that people were able to go through, and some of it was not good. And therefore, the idea of actually being able to sift the information that you watch or listen to is your choice. But I do agree with you that I don't watch news. That's not something I really, or those type, because a lot of the time some of the entertainment is news, and it's really news that is now, and then it's just because it's news, because like many charities around, they're dealing with the problems that are affected by the consciousness of the human race, not solving that problem. So it's the same issue, but I think it's a choice for somebody to make to actually turn it off.
Yeah, and it's not just the news for me. It's the drama programming. Okay, look, we're all in the biz. Okay, we know. Jenny produced reality TV for 10 years. My wife, and they want drama. They produce drama. They set people up. They lie to people.
Correct. Yeah.
They try to get people fighting. They take an unstable person. They'll interview people, get an unstable person, and bring them in and set them up. Ha ha ha! Laugh behind the scenes. Oh, this is going to make them mad. They'll set these two people up who hate each other, and they'll set the right conditions so the people will have a flare up, and then they just let that spill out to the public, and the public's in a feeding frenzy. They have a bloodlust for drama. They have a bloodlust for negativity. They have a bloodlust for death, for all of this violence that you see on TV. And they let that drama just spill out, and the people out there watching TV in Zombieland just suck it up. And it's all a part of a mass psychosis.
Well, I know that you're doing, as I said, I think this conversation could go on for 2 or 3 hours very, very easily. But I know you actually have in 2015, you're actually on a world tour with some of today's most sought-after speakers, such as Steve Forbes, Rudy Giuliani, John Maxwell, Mark Cuban, President Clinton, Dr. Marsalis, Richard Branson, as well as Tom Hanks and John Mayer. And what is this tour going to be about, and where is it going?
Well, the tour, it's going into 15 different major cities. And basically, I am totally 100% unqualified to be on that tour. I'm like the new guy who has been chosen. I've only done small venues. I've spoken with the LA's mayor's office and the chief of police of LAPD. I've done some things with the United Nations. I've done really small venues. These are like 10,000 person venues. So this is a big learning experience for me. And this is just a part of the miracle of what happened to me by turning off the television and starting to consume what is good and natural and healthy. And by the way, I'm not saying there isn't some good stuff on TV, and everyone's defense position is always, oh yeah, but there's good stuff on TV like the Discovery Channel. But by and large, people are watching primetime commercial television shows. And what we think about is a lifelong meditation. These are meditations. So consider, I would just like to say to the audience, consider, would you please, that when you're watching something, that it is at least becoming a part of your experiential identity. As you experience it, it is at least a meditation. If prayer means anything, if meditation means anything, what we consume, through our total senses, consumption, food, sounds, people, relationships, our senses, what we consume and take into our consciousness has to mean something. It's at least a part of a meditation. I would just suggest meditating on something a little better, a little more. Because when I did, beautiful things happened in my life. Beautiful people showed up in my life. Beautiful experiences showed up in my life. And I'll tell you how this world tour invite came. And this goes all the way back to the Goodwill Treaty, which you signed. I had my daughters were born. Here they are. They're sitting here. They're waving, everybody. Savannah and Sierra McGill. They're waving.
Hi.
And any father, when you have kids, what do? You start looking around the world and saying, gosh, man, there's some problems out here. And then you start thinking about your legacy as a human being and what world you're going to leave your children. And me, in my own naivete, I said, hey, I want to make the world a better place. I want to do something to make the world a better place. And you'll appreciate this because you are in the entertainment business for a long time. I wasn't in the entertainment business. I was a hick, nobody, who was raised on a dirt road running around barefoot in Alabama, who knew nothing about fancy people, fancy things, anything like that. And so because of what I consider to be the total consumption of negativity, which means I grew up not questioning things. I grew up believing what I was told. I was inculcated in government schools, called public schools, to believe in certain traditions and values. And so I believed everything that I was told, and I was a good citizen. And so I consumed the bad TV, the bad food, and I found myself, here I was wanting to do something to make the world a better place, but I was really unhealthy. You should have seen me. I'll give you a little story. I had created this peace treaty, which you signed, and tons of people in your former industry have signed it.
It's still my industry. I'm still in it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry about that.
Before you go on to that, I want to bring on because I know you've got an event coming up, and we're coming pretty close to we've got about 15 minutes left on the show. Yeah. I don't want to shut down. We have Suze Green.
Wonderful.
Who's you wanted to bring on because you actually have a Supreme Partners Live benefit.
Absolutely.
This weekend. So at the Sheraton Gateway LAX Hotel, and she's from the legendary group, the Supremes.
Hello.
Hello. Good morning, Suze.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? This is Adrian Paul and Ethan Dettenmaier, and we also have, of course, Bryant McGill as well with us. How are you doing this morning?
I'm just great, and how lovely to be invited by two such lovely gentlemen.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I was a big fan of the Supremes, by the way.
Terrific. Well, in turn, I have been a great fan of yours for a long time.
Oh, thank
you.
So
it's lovely for all of us to get together today.
Well, can you tell me a little bit about this event that you have coming up?
Certainly. On the 5th of July, which is this coming Saturday, at the Sheraton Gateway LAX, Supreme Partners Live is our show. It starts at 6 p.m. Our pink carpet is at 5:45, and of course it will be Sherry Payne and myself. Opening the show is Charlo Crossley from 20 Feet from Stardom. I was in 20 Feet from Stardom with Charlo, of course. Mm-hmm. And we are delighted to have Bryant McGill come out and speak to us about peace.
Now, do you think there's a power in music and peace in our society?
Oh, there's no doubt. Every one of us can think of a song for a particularly important time in our lives, and that song takes us there. Music is the strongest factor that human beings manufacture for our own healing and pleasure. And I think not enough people really realize the power of it.
Well, I think, it's become a very global entertainment driven media now because of, you have things like... And I enjoy watching people that have talent musically, and I think it's opened up a lot for the younger generation. There are many, many more with America's Got Talent, with... what's the other big one?
Sure, The Voice.
Yeah, all these. I think
Dancing with the Stars, all that stuff.
All that stuff.
Sure.
It's fantastic. Let me ask you something to say. Do you what's your charity that do you do a lot of charity work? How does that spill into your life?
I'm very concerned, of course, with women's issues, being a woman, a wife, an entertainer, being a mother. You tend to look for the things that are going to affect all of us. And women, whether we want to admit it or not, and in spite of women's lib or whatever you would call it, women still are the primary carer in most children's lives. So I think it's very important, the things that women develop and the things that you look to. I'm concerned with children's charities, with veterans, of course. I love our vets. They put their lives on the line for us to keep us free. But of course, my concern is peace. As a mother, I believe that women are the ones who, in spite of the fact, that men go to war, there are women that go to war as well. But mothers are the ones who suffer with the loss of their children. Families are torn apart by war. And we all know it's about money. Mm-hmm. It's about selling guns and bullets and big bombs. But peace is a possibility. But it has to start with each one of us, the consciousness of that. So those are my concerns. What is
the Supreme Lives event benefit for? What does it benefit as such? Is it a concert that benefits a cause?
Yes, it benefits several causes. It benefits some children's charities, and it benefits some veterans associations and, veterans causes and champions veterans. So it's very, very much, in line with what we think in our hearts. That's what's important to us.
Right. Brian, you're speaking at this event at the end of the concert. Is there a direction in your speech or your topic?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm talking about the possibility of peace and what the treaty represents. The treaty, which Suse and I started together many, many years ago, which has been now signed by over 125,000 people who have put their signature, their oath of intention on that paper to say that they believe that peace is possible and that peace begins in one's own life by becoming a cautious consumer with your consciousness. And so we're going to talk about the journey, my journey to peace, because I was not a person of peace. I had created this peace treaty for my daughters, And I found myself one day on in a strange place on a red carpet next to somebody wearing a $10,000 silk suit, and I was wearing the fat pants from Walmart because that's all that would fit my 50-inch waist. And I walked up to the microphone, and I was sweating, and I said, "I'm here to talk about world peace." And I realized in that moment that I was a total hypocrite. Here I was talking about world peace, and yet I was treating my own body violently. I was talking about starvation, and I was eating more than my fair share. And I had an epiphany in that moment, and I decided to begin living my peace and my truth. I committed to make changes in my own life to live peacefully. I lost over 100 pounds, kept it off for 5 years. I wanted to become a good messenger. I wanted to have the vitality to deliver a message that peace is possible, like Suse says, that it's a possibility.
Well, the interesting thing is I think we all have goals in our lives, but the road to achieving that goal is always paved with a lot of rocks, and we have to dodge those rocks. Because, like you said, if you want to achieve something, sometimes you get pushed to the side because something gets in your way, and sometimes we forget and we fall back into those ways that we had before.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm going to have to end this now because we've got to the show to go. But I want to thank you both for coming on this morning. I commend you both for what you do. Obviously, Suzanne, your music has touched millions of people, and I'm sure it continue to do so. Bryant, you are touching millions now, which I think is awesome. Again, I'd love to talk to you again after the show because about some of the things we can do together.
You bet. I just want to throw in real quick that anyone who comes to the event, I'm giving away 500 autographed books of The Voice of Reason, which is my book about violence in society and how we can make the world a better place.
And that's on Saturday, July 5th at the Sheraton Gateway LAX Hotel. You can find out about that at brianmcgill.com/events. We'll have that on our website very shortly. Gentlemen, ladies, thank you so much for coming on and joining us and enlightening us a little bit about these things.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
A pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Well, that was interesting this morning. A slightly different way to go. John, are you still there?
I am here, yes.
I know. We've been talking about violence basically this morning and stopping it. I know we have a hero of the week that actually went through a situation very similar. Can you bring us the hero of the week right now?
Yes, a couple of quick statistics. There are 20 million orphans in sub-Saharan Africa. 15% of that 20 million, which is 3 million kids, will commit suicide by the age of 18 to escape a future where 60% of those girls will become prostitutes and 70% of those boys will become hardened criminals to survive. There are 600 million people in Africa under the age of 25. In the next 30 years, that number is going to double. But unfortunately, there's not a lot of employment. There's not a lot of opportunity. One of those young people in Africa is Timothy Machasio. He is 19 years old. In 2007, when he was only 12 years old, his brother was murdered in a robbery. Now, initially, Timothy reacted in the same way any of us would, with grief for the loss of his brother, rage against the men who did it. But as he started to think about it, he started to think, why did those men kill my brother? Did their actions come from inherent cruelty or evil, or did their actions come from desperation and circumstance created by that lack of employment and the lack of opportunity for the young people of Africa? Timothy decided that he would use as his weapons education, empowerment, and employment. And so he started the Teen Entrepreneurship Summit, which the current best source of information is to follow them on Twitter at TES_Kenya. You can also follow Timothy at Timothy Machasio, Machasio. Now, what the Teen Entrepreneur Summit does is to take young people in Africa and pair them up with mentors and entrepreneurs to basically teach them how to be leaders. They put together their own projects, they put together their own businesses to tackle all kinds of issues such as tribal warfare, crime, and pollution. Timothy has also put putting together something called Oyama, Oyama. It's a crowdfunding organization that you can find at the oyamafund.org. Again, that's Oyama. Now, the purpose of this is to develop the ideas of young Africans into businesses that address social challenges and alleviate unemployment. Now, does it work? Absolutely it works. On the Peace Fund Radio Twitter, a little bit ago, I put a link to a CNN story about a business that's starting up in Johannesburg by two teenaged African men. Now, these young guys have started their own business, and they employ 3 fellow teenagers, one young man and 2 young women. They take electronics and things people have thrown out, and they turn them into jewelry. They turn them into furniture. It's fantastic, the work that they're doing. I urge everybody to check out this video and see what some graduates of Timothy's program have done. So far, Timothy has worked with 100 young people and placed them into organizations that have impacted 30,000. Excuse me, I got that wrong. Train young people in over 100 organizations that have impacted 30,000 lives, and they just keep going. So again, check him out. TES_Kenya on Twitter, and oyamafund.org for the work that Timothy is doing. Timothy, you're doing great work out there. You are our Peace Fund Radio Hero of the Week.
Where is Timothy from?
He is from Kenya.
From Kenya. Does he still live in Kenya?
Yes. He is actually, they're doing 2 of the summits later this year, one in Nairobi and one in Mombasa.
Well, I think I'm glad we actually have some heroes of the week that are not necessarily just US bound. I think there are kids all over the world doing this, and the kids are going to change the world and the way we think. I mean, Bryant's talked about the male-dominated society that actually causes a lot of the problems that we create, and therefore to actually have a balanced view of having females and males combat the problems that we deal with daily is possibly a better solution to how we live our lives. So as we move forward in our lives and in our society, hopefully we can follow the kids that, such as our hero of the week today, who has taken it on himself to change things around him. So congratulations there, Timothy. How do you say, is it Machasio?
Machasio.
Machasio.
Well, and we're working on getting him on the show to talk about the upcoming summit.
Oh, that'll be awesome. We are basically running out very quickly. Is there anything else we got, John? Because we are dashing forward. You may have seen all the Basecamp stuff that we've got there, John.
I do. It's fantastic. Also, everybody, really quickly, go to youtube.com/Livy's Hope, LIVYS, to see the latest video by our recent guest, Haley Scheinman, who has made another incredible video about her battle against epilepsy, of which her twin sister Livy suffers from. It's an incredible little video. We had her on the show recently. Okay, and obviously, thank you, John, for bringing us that. I know it's been short today, but we've had some really interesting discussions, I think. It's a great show. Great show. Fabulous. Thanks, John. Thank you again to all of you that are making Peace Fund Games a huge success. We'll be announcing something very special about that very shortly once we finalize the field, etc. But it looks like it's going to happen. We will announce that obviously on our site once we have it up. Thank you to everybody behind the scenes. The Peace Fund will be front and center on that organization, but there will be many other organizations, charities that we will be bringing together to actually make the change in the life of a young person somewhere on this planet. I want to close our show today by a quote by Mohandas Gandhi. If we are ever to have real peace in this world, we shall have to begin with the children. Very simple, very true. Thanks to the Speechley family for making this show possible, and thank you for all of you for out there for listening to us week in, week out. This is Adrian, Paul, and Ethan Dettenmaier.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Adrian, Paul, and Ethan Dettenmaier, right here on LA Talk Radio.